All right. First of all, apologies to our guests who've been very patient, and I'm going to ask them to be just a little bit more patient as we go through the briefing. In a very short while, we will be joined by Abdullah Al-Dardari, who, as you know, is UNDP's Assistant Administrator and Director of the Regional Bureau for Arab States. And we're also joined by Sudipto Mukherjee, UNDP's Resident Representative in Syria. They will be here to join you to brief you on the socioeconomic impact of 14 years of conflict in Syria. Trip announcement for you on Sunday. The Secretary General will arrive in Geneva, where he will take part in the 58th session of the Human Rights Council, which is scheduled to kick off on Monday morning. In his remarks, the Secretary General is expected to say that without respect for human rights, sustainable peace is a pipe dream. He will also state that breathing life into the work of the Human Rights Council and the Pact for the Future can help the suffocation of human rights can help end the suffocation of human rights we're seeing currently around the world. The Pact calls for peace processes and approaches rooted in the key pillars that reinforce human rights, from the Universal Declaration to international law and the UN Charter, he's expected to add. Later in the day, he's also expected to address the high-level segment of the Conference on Disarmament, where he will call on member states to seize the fresh momentum provided by the Pact for the Future to make tangible progress on disarmament issues. While in Geneva, he's expected to have a number of bilateral meetings, and he will be back in New York on Sunday night. But before he heads to Geneva, he has to conclude his trip to Barbados. He's currently in Bridgetown, as you know, attending the 48th regular meeting of CARICOM. This morning, he participated in a closed session with CARICOM heads of government, where he exchanged views on pressing issues in the region, such as finance, climate, and security, with a focus on Haiti. Last night, at the opening ceremony, the Secretary General said that the exquisite beauty of the Caribbean is famed the world over, but that there is trouble in paradise. He noted that a wave after wave of crises pounding the people of the Caribbean and their islands, with no time to catch their breath before the next disaster strikes, stressing that the international solutions are essential to create a better today and a brighter tomorrow for the wonderful region and for the world. The Secretary General said he sees three key areas where together we must drive progress. First, he said unity for peace and security, particularly to address the appalling situation in Haiti, where gangs are inflicting intolerable suffering on the people of Haiti. The Secretary General added that he will soon report to the Security Council on the situation in Haiti, including proposals for the role of the UN can play to support the stability and security and address the root causes of the crisis. The Secretary General further highlighted the unity on the climate crisis and sustainable development areas where progress is needed. Also yesterday, he held a bilateral meeting with Prime Minister Mia Mottley, the host of the meeting. They exchanged views on regional and global issues, particularly Haiti and climate change. And he commended Barbados for spearheading efforts to advance reforms of the international financial architecture through the Bridgetown Initiative 3.0. And this morning, he also met with the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, and the presidential advisor of the Transitional Presidential Council of Haiti, Laurent Saint-Cyr, and with the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Patricia Scotland. He will be heading back to New York later this afternoon. Staying on Haiti, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that armed violence in the country's capital continues to drive displacement and worsen humanitarian needs. According to an International Organization for Migration, more than 6,000 people have been displaced in just over 3 weeks in and around Port-au-Prince. An outbreak of violence in Kenskov, in the city's outskirts, on January 27th is still ongoing and has displaced more than 4,000 people. Meanwhile, violence in other parts of the city have displaced nearly 2,000 people just since 14th February. Partners reports that last week, armed groups set fire to the university hospital in Port-au-Prince. The university had been closed since February of last year due to ongoing attacks. Nationally, only 27% of health facilities with beds are fully functional. An estimated 4.2 million men, women, and children, that's nearly a third of the population of the country will require humanitarian health assistance this year. Our Deputy Secretary General, Mina Mohammed, is in Johannesburg, where she's representing the Secretary General at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. On the margin of the meeting, she visited the Nelson Mandela Foundation, where she met with Dr. Naledi Pandor, Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Foundation, and also took part in a roundtable discussion on social cohesion in South Africa. Ms. Mohammed held a series of bilateral meetings, including with Cyril Ramaphosa, the President obviously of the Republic of South Africa, to discuss the G20 presidency, as well as Ronald Lamola, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation of South Africa, for an exchange on G20 priorities, pertinent global and regional issues. She also met Mauro Vieira, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Brazil, to discuss Brazil's own priorities in preparations for COP30, which Brazil will host later this year. Tomorrow, she'll attend the second and final day of the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of UN peace operations, arrived in Juba in South Sudan. While there, he met with officials to discuss with them the challenges facing South Sudan, the ongoing peace process, and of course, things that our peacekeeping mission can do to support it. Prior to South Sudan, Mr. Lacroix was in Port Sudan, where he held discussions there with high-level officials on the government, focusing on strengthening cooperation and coordination in support for the peacekeeping efforts in the Abyei region, which Mr. Lacroix will also visit. Today, our friend Hannah Tete took office as the new special representative of the Secretary General for Libya and head of the political mission in Libya, recognizing that a lasting solution must be Libyan-owned and Libyan-led. She said in a statement that she intends to actively engage with all Libyans across the political spectrum and work with regional and international actors to preserve Libya's national unity, territorial integrity, sovereignty, and enable Libyan institutions to hold inclusive elections. And from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the World Food Program tells us that it's partially resumed food assistance in parts of Goma, delivering vital nutrition supplies for the treatment of moderate acute malnutrition in children. With major access routes closed, Goma's international airport also closed. WFP's priority is to resume operations fully as soon as it is safe to do so. The WFP-run UN Humanitarian Air Service, which provides humanitarians with critical access and support across the country, urgently requires $33 million to sustain operations in the country this year. Without additional contributions, air operations could be suspended as early as the end of March. And I just want to read into the record that yesterday, the Special Representative of the Secretary General for the DRC, Bintou Keita, and the Special Envoy for the Great Lakes, Huang Xia, briefed Security Council members on the situation in the DRC. They both warned of the risks of the current violence escalating into a wider conflict in the region. And this morning, the council members heard from Valentine Rugwabiza, the Special Representative of the Secretary General and head of the UN mission in the CAR. She said the forthcoming local, legislative, and presidential elections this year in the CAR represent significant opportunity to consolidate progress and achieve the extension of state authority and lay the foundation for decentralized government. Her remarks were shared with you. Turning to Gaza, the humanitarian coordinator for the occupied Palestinian territory, Mohanad Hadi, visited the Gaza Strip along with Amy Pope, the head of the International Organization for Migration. They went to several areas in the south and spoke to residents who said they urgently need shelter support. Ms. Hadi and Ms. Pope also met with humanitarian partners and staff and heads of UN agencies to discuss the ongoing response. Meanwhile, humanitarian colleagues tell us that the scale-up of humanitarian assistance in Gaza continues. Since the ceasefire came into effect, we and our partners have reached nearly everyone in Gaza with food parcels and with most families receiving more than 1 month of rations. We're also preparing to support the third polio vaccination campaign across Gaza, which is set to resume Saturday. WHO and UNICEF has warned that the current environment in Gaza creates ideal conditions for further spread of the polio virus, as transmission can happen in overcrowded shelters when water, sanitation, and hygiene infrastructure is damaged. Also, we and our partners are helping health facilities across Gaza restore their services and increased capacity. WHO is supporting with supplies and equipment, ensuring a 3-month stock. In North Gaza, Kamal Adwan Hospital has now opened an outpatient department. And UNFPA tells us that 2,400 postpartum kits have been distributed to all hospitals that provide maternity services over the past 2 weeks. And turning to the northern areas of the West Bank to support displaced Palestinian families due to the military operations, the Humanitarian Fund for the OPT this week redirected funding for existing projects to provide cash assistance, rental subsidies, and essential items, including food. Also, just a note regarding the ceasefire agreement between Hamas and Israel, we have seen how Hamas handed over the bodies of a mother and 2 children from the Bibas family, as well as that of an 84-year-old man. I can tell you that the Secretary General condemns the parading of bodies and displaying of coffins of the deceased hostages in this manner this morning, which is both abhorrent and appalling. Under international law, any handover of the remains of deceased must comply with the prohibition of cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment, ensuring respect for the dignity and the deceased and their families. The Secretary General reiterates his appeal to the parties to abide by their commitments to continue the full implementation of the ceasefire and hostage release deal. He urges the parties to the conflict to respect the remains of the dead and return them to their relatives consistent with applicable obligations under international humanitarian law and human rights law. We have long been calling for, as you know, the release of all hostages, a permanent ceasefire, and irreversible progress towards a 2-state solution. And just a quick note on Ukraine, the UN interagency convoy delivered medicines today to Kherson, as well as blankets, hygiene items, solar lamps, and clothing to the communities there. This marks the 4th convoy to Kherson region just this year. People living in that region continue to be severely impacted by ongoing hostilities. Homes and critical infrastructure have been damaged and livelihoods disrupted, aggravating an already dire humanitarian situation during a harsh winter. Matthias Schmale, our humanitarian coordinator and resident coordinator there, condemned the attack and called for the respect of international humanitarian law. The mission was part of a project to support evacuations funded by the Ukraine Humanitarian Fund. According to the NGO, this was the 65th incident involving assets or persons since the escalation of war in 2022. Today is indeed the World Day of Social Justice. Amina Mohammed, our Deputy Secretary General, said today in a tweet that social justice is at the heart of the Sustainable Development Goals. On this day, she added, "Let us work together to build a fair, more inclusive world, equal opportunities for everyone." We got money from a member state. What is that? It's a very old tree, and it's one of the oldest oak trees in Europe, known as the Stelmugia oak, and a natural monument to this in this member state that paid its dues today. It's estimated between 1,000 and 2,000 years old, and it is located in this country in the village of Stelmugia. Slovenia. All right. Nope. One more try. Lithuania. We thank our friends in Vilnius for their money and for their tree. All right, Margaret, and then Edie. What?
You printed out that?
Yeah, we print out a photo. Oh, yeah, I know what you're going to say. Go ahead. Go ahead, Maggie.
Steph, could you just go back to the comments the Secretary General made at the CARICOM conference and give us a little more detail on his plan for Haiti? He said that the UN would assume responsibility for the structural and logistical costs, and the salaries would be paid through the trust fund. So does that mean it would still be called an MSS, or would it become some sort of UN mission? Can you explain it a bit more?
No, it will not be a peacekeeping mission. I mean, the structure would very likely stay the same. I think what you will find is more of a Somalia model, where we have the UN support office in Somalia, which provides logistical support, non-lethal support, rations, medevacs, and everything to the AU peacekeeping force. The support mission is paid out of the regular budget, and the AU mission is paid out through voluntary contributions. So we'll have to wait for the details. The report, I expect, will go to the council by the end of February. This follows a very thorough assessment of the full range of options for the UN to support the medium-term security goals of Haiti. And in line with what we can realistically do.
So you mean it'll be like UNSUM, not AMISOM?
It'll be
because it sounded a bit like AMISOM, but I don't
no.
think it was.
It'll be you'll have a
But which
UN
mission?
you'll have a UN mission paid for by the regular budget, which will provide logistical support, non-lethal support to the existing MSS.
No, but I'm sorry, but I mean, when he says based on Somalia, he means based on UNSUM, or he means based on the previous AMISOM?
Based
Because
on
it
this,
sounds a bit like AMISOM, but I think you mean
Yes, exactly.
UNSUM. So I just want to
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Edie?
Thank you, Steph. In eastern Congo, what kind of communication is the UN having with the M23 forces that now control Goma and Bukavu, particularly in terms of getting humanitarian aid into the areas? On the military side, it appears that MONUSCO is boxed in and unable to go anywhere.
Well, I think that would probably be a fair assessment. We're very limited in our freedom of movement in Goma. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get an update from our peacekeeping colleagues today, but your question leads me to remind you that Bintou Keita will be here tomorrow. In terms of contacts, as far as I know, it is very operational contacts having to do with our the safety of our people. Obviously, on the humanitarian front, I assume they have the contacts necessary to ensure what little our humanitarians can do, as we outlined from World Food Program, in safety and security. Amélie, and then Deji.
Thanks, Steph. Just to follow up on Haiti. Obviously, that's a proposal from the SG, but has he discussed with the member of the Security Council on whether they would be on board with this
Well, I mean,
solution?
obviously, it is a proposal to the Security Council. They will have to approve it. I have no doubt that they will not. The proposals will not come as a complete surprise to them. But obviously, this is a formal process, and it's in response to the letter. To a request from the Security Council. Deji.
Yes, first on Ukraine. I know I asked you this on Monday about the peacekeeping forces after maybe there might be a ceasefire deal in Ukraine. Today, the Italian foreign minister suggested that it would be better if UN could send out force to keep the what they call DMZ maybe safer and stable. Will UN do that if there's a ceasefire
there
deal?
is. You're jumping over a lot of things right now and speculating.
I'm not the one
which
who's
I will.
jumping.
What?
The foreign minister of
No, I'm
Italy is jumping.
speaking to you, Deji. I'm
Okay.
not speaking to the foreign minister. So I'm not going to speculate, but as you know, as a matter of course, UN peacekeeping missions have to be approved by the Security Council. But we're not in this position now. We are in the situation that we are, which is that the war is continuing. I mean, we keep briefing you on these things almost every day, and I'm happy to reiterate yet again our position, but I think you know it fairly well by now. Pam.
Thanks, Steph. I asked Geir Peterson, and we do have Syrian UNDP today. He said the UN would look into it, but there have been killings in homes in Hama in Syria by armed gangs
Yep.
associated with ISIS, according to local reports, of ethnic groups. Anything you have found out about that?
Nothing more than what Mr. Pedersen may have told you.
All right.
Okay, yes, Maggie.
Sorry, just one more on Haiti. Some time back, the Secretary General said, I believe in one of his reports to the Council, that a UN peacekeeping operation, a traditional one, would be the option of last resort. Is that still his position?
Yeah, his position on that has not changed. I mean, we have an existing structure, the multinational support force. We're trying to put forward proposals that will boost it and that will enable it to do fulfill its own mandate more effectively. Okay, thank you very much. I again thank our guests for their patience, but I think we are ready to go. We're ready to go to our guests. If we can put them on the screen, please.